All right, namaskar and a very warm welcome to everyone joined in today on our 13th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. This talk is being organized by the Central Zoo Authority, New Delhi, as part of the ongoing Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. The Mahotsav is a 75-week celebration to commemorate 75 years of India's independence, which falls on the 15th of August 2022. The Central Zoo Authority is taking this celebration forward through a massive conservation outreach campaign entitled Conservation to Coexistence, The People Connect. Under the helm of this campaign, we will be showcasing 75 conservation priority species and 75 zoos, highlighting one species and one zoo each week. We are currently in week 13 of this celebration with the grey jungle fowl as the species in focus and the Sri Venkateshwara Zoological Park as the zoo in focus. Joined in today to speak to us on the species in focus is Dr. Mervyn Fernandes. A brief introduction about Dr. Fernandes. Dr. Fernandes has 2 decades of experience in species conservation with a focus on pheasant ecology, spatial prioritization, and policy research. He has technical expertise in situ and ex situ conservation, sustainable livelihood development, policy development, and capacity enhancement of institute and agencies. He did his doctorate research on the red jungle fowl, its spatial patterns and abundance from the Wildlife Institute of India, and he's currently working as a program coordinator with Traffic India. He will speak to us today on the ecology of the species in focus and its threats. Over to you, sir, to please begin your talk. Sir, you need to unmute yourself.
Thank you a lot. On the onset, let me thank CZA, MOEFCC, Sri Venkateshwara Zoological Park for giving me this opportunity to speak on one of the most common but fantastic present, the grey jungle fowl. I shall just start sharing my presentation. So one of the first questions that come in mind is like why we undertake studies with respect to common species, when much of the focus has been on rare endangered species, uh, and they comes with its own sets of issues, especially with respect to development issues forecast by human beings. And we see a lot of government focus again on these type of species. But when we look at common species, by contrast, they do have some few very valuable characteristics. And one of the most valuable characteristics is that they form a considerable amount of presence within an ecosystem. So the larger question is, with respect to this, is like, what is this role that the species play, and what if species is not present within these ecosystems? Then what happens to these ecosystems or these systems? And as we move forward, when we see changing patterns in the world, how do these common species try to adapt themselves? Another very pertinent question with respect to common species is the state. The state of being common is very rare. It's like being like many of the species we know are not very common at all. And hence to address this answer, it's like it would be try to explain in terms of the exception rather than what is the norm which is present over there. And the third other answer is like we've also seen drastic declines in many of these common species. And it's also seen what effects does it have within the ecosystem. And occasionally to a point that these common species have reached extinction rates. And hence it is very important to also understand and look at these common species and their role within the ecosystem. The species in focus, right, as we said, is the grey jungle fowl, and it does come under the ambit, under the ambit of a common species. So let's go back and understand the very onset of this species, the genus Callus. Primarily, it's having its originations from the Indian refuge species and from early Pleistocene and late Pliocene plus. That's only one recorded fossil for the genus Callus, and this is described from Greek. So it is quite interesting to understand if the ancestor or the fossil is found in these areas, were Callus once upon a time occupying larger areas and now be restricted to lesser areas, or to the Oriental breed to be very particular. Also, through the time, we've seen a lot of genetic work being done on this, and we know that the gray and silver jungle fowl species are two sister taxas. But most of the genetic work for the species is trying to understand, especially with the red jungle fowl, is this very interesting case of the domestic chicken and how did the domestic chicken origin. With that focus, let's go and understand more with respect to the gray jungle. So if you look at some of the early described distributions for this species, as I said, it's endemic within the Indian subcontinent with the red jungle fowl here. And primarily it is seen only within the central part of India to produce work India. Here in this picture depicted from Chaskara, you see the grey jungle fowl, which is Sri fowl, and the red jungle fowl, which is quite largely spread right from India into the Southeast Asian countries with different subspecies over there. But quite early in time, Chaskara and also other authors, what they have shown is that there could have been, this was an argument that put forth, is that there could have been a subspecies within the northwestern Indias of Rajasthan. And many of them have suggested that the voice is quite different, but most of the authors with respect to describing species or a work on pheasants itself did not even create the subspecies, and we still consider a grey jungle fowl could be one species and not having any subspecies. We also know that since it was an endemic species, earlier work done some time back only shows large amounts of distributions. To understand what scale and how it was not possible. Only within some few years back, when a consortium of organizations came together, we could undertake some amount of analysis. And this has come out within the report known as the State of Indian Birds Report, where we tried to map out primarily to see how well the species has been represented. And this was possible only through the use of citizen science programs, which was available. So, in fact, citizen science gave us this map where we could catalog and get information from a wide ranging people, at least of knowing of its presence. Again, over here, we are really reporting frequency of presence of the species, and this does not represent the population size. So, and in simple terms, what is represented here is whether the species has been sighted, documented in that area, and what is the constant amount of time the species has been recorded within the area. So if you look at it from the past records to now, the past distribution march, which was evidently available to now, the distribution is nearly the same in terms of it. The larger gray areas or the open barren areas are primarily areas where they're not conducive habitats, or maybe urbanized areas within the consistent where the species is habitat. The broad habitats, as this is a widely ranging species, if you look at it, the habitats over here are comprising of primary and secondary forest, primary broad deal deciduous forest with secondary undergrowth, bamboo thickets, and patches of cultivation. Cultivations also, it's mostly abandoned cultivations where the species is found. And the restriction, as I said, is south. It has been known that the Godavari River, which flows from Madhya Pradesh into Andhra Pradesh, is the dividing line for this species. And that was so when we were nighted earlier research about some red jungle fowl trying to look at distribution, where we could also look at some amount of time I did spend in few areas along the periphery of grey jungle fowl distribution, and we got to confirm the presence of grey jungle fowl rather than the presence of red jungle fowl. So taking this forward with the distribution, what we know of the species is like it's a medium-sized bird, weighing around the maximum weight is around 1.5 to 1.7 kilos. This is generally the male weight. The females are much more lighter in weight. Maximum they will go up to 800 grams. It is very unique that many of the pheasants and so also these callous species of grey jungle fowl, they do require two structural layers of habitat. They do roost at night on treetops, whereas during the day they are mostly seen on the ground. And hence both these two form critical habitats for the species. Like it's not only to look at stuff cover, primarily it's structural component of it. It doesn't matter what is the shrub species, but how the shrub cover is the percentage of shrub cover that is present within a area does provide an adequate support for the species, primarily to hide from predators and also to find food foraging species which are there. Again, since these species are widely distributed, they have a good niche in terms of the diet. What is also important to note that these species breeds during the summer, during February to May, which is primarily the spring to summer time season, primarily the ground nester birds. Not primarily, but they are definitely ground nester birds. You won't see them nesting on a substrate except on the ground. The nest is primarily a few amount of twins which are put together, very clumsily put together and are exhibit. But it's always seen in the clump of a shrub or in the clump of the bamboo bush. Uh, there is one side escape cover always available for these nests for the bird to escape if there is some threat that's available. The clutch sizes vary from 3 to 5. Sometimes you do get slightly more number of eggs also. Up to 8 is recorded in few cases. But there are very rare incidences which is seen. And also sometimes in few areas there are reports of double clutching. There are two clutches which is been taken. When this is only seen in terms of when the first clutch is destroyed quite early during the breeding cycle. We have done there are few reports which suggest that this was given to a certain clutches. The incubation period is generally up to 20 to 21 days, which most of the authors confirm to, and the chicks which are there are precaution parents self in nature. This is the broad ecology for the species. What we know from trends in terms of distribution through the years, we see that there is some amount in terms of slight drop in terms of the distribution for the species. Now, the actual parameters, since we do not have much reliable estimates from across its range, there are few which are available. We do not have population estimates from many of these sites from the studies. Also, there is no continuous monitoring done in the forest for these species because there's no probably 1% or 20% here and without gray jungle types of focus study was done there. But this change in abundance index is also quite interesting. We do not know factors and we have not known, in fact, looked at variables as to what has caused this abundance index to fall to a slightly lower level. It is speculated that some amount of habitat alteration is seen in many of these distribution areas for the great jungle type, and that could be a reason why we could see lower abundances of a fall in terms of the other with respect to species. Coming to what is the overall governance mechanism for the species in terms of its protection status. The species is listed in Schedule 2 in the Wildlife Protection Act. But the Act also provides protection to the nest and the eggs for birds. And hence, this bird also gets the same level of protection. Now, it is immaterial whether the bird is within the national park or wildlife sanctuary, just by rule post when the bird being listed within the species, it does get its own protection for it. At the international level, we have CITES, where CITES has, since 75, has put the species in Appendix 2. And there is regulated trade which is known to occur with respect to this species, being an Appendix 2, and regulate with respect to the trade in the species. What are the major threats that the species have is being confounded with? So we know that there is a lot of habitat modification which is taking place. Either the habitats are getting modified, or they're getting older, or we see a lot of ingression of agriculture into the forest parts. Also, we see a lot of modification, especially done in areas which have seen invasive species growth. And that itself has, with my red jungle work, we've that sudden changes in the understory power has shifts in terms of where the species is found and also in terms of our health. If I draw a parallel to the sister species, I think so the same modification will cause similar effects on the gray jumper fowl itself, especially when modifications are done at the strawberry level especially during the breeding season. There is some amount of hunting and poaching for the bird, which is seen right across all its distribution range. There is no particular area which we do not see. Uh, the intensity may not be that high for various other species, but it is there. It is persistent and it is there. And poaching also does take place with respect to the eggs of the species. And the illegal trade primarily is with respect to the feathers, which is a prized commodity, especially for fly fishing. From 2000 to 2020, if you look at what are the number of cases globally which have been seen with respect to holy grade products. So we've seen that there are 32 cases with respect to feather trade. There are 11 cases with respect to skin pieces and one with respect to a skin. And across the years, these patterns have now been only been shifted to the feather trade. So why is the feather so important in the international market? Despite there being a regulation for trade and trade can occur with the species. Since 75, we've been looking at it that feather has been the most important price commodity. Uh, the feather, look at it, it's primarily been seen as being used in the create the sophisticated fly fishing nets, which is being used particularly for fish species. And it does come with a price. In many countries, we do see it. This is again taken from a website which is there. Again, it says it does not ship to India, but again, feathers are still available for trade. And again, if it goes to the trade, it does require a CITES certification because of freedom and species. Through the years, the number of cases which are being reported from multiple countries are there. You see over here. One information that was not available when I looked through the CITES trade data is the quantum of feathers that is being paid. Uh, so that is put some amount of I couldn't analyze to understand what is the level of feathers that are being going into this sheet metal. And these are only seizure cases. Whereas there is another amount of data which is available, which also talks about in terms of regulated trade in terms of feathers and skins. Globally, through the years, this is how the trade pattern looks at. Most of the trade is centered around Europe towards the US, Canada, and some of the South America, but mostly towards the European countries where the feather trade is there. Also, through CITES 2012 documentation, there is some captive breeding which has been done in the European Union across few countries, and stocks are still prevalent of gray jungle fowl for breeding in the European Union. And so then it is possible that some of these feathers may be coming out from some of these stocks itself. That is what respect to trade. And some few more points that I would wanted to make with respect to what have we learned from our jungle fowl work, from the great jungle fowls, and how we could leverage that part of work with respect to great jungle fowl. And so one primarily focusing on the captive breeding part of it. What we know about it is like now there could be an improved system of data management, but pedigree information is quite important and basic genetic level information is quite necessary to be available with respect to zoos. Jungle fowls, by nature or by virtue of the species, they are known to breed given some amount of protection levels. But whether the breeding and whether the generations that have been coming up within captivity, how do they compare with respect to the wild population? Since we do not have any information, even till date, we do not have any information on the genetic levels or opportunity levels within the wild, it is quite difficult to compare and see what is the genetic levels and especially when we're doing a captive breeding program for jungle fowls in captivity, how do they match with this divide? The second part is like, are these populations of gray jungle fowls separated to different subpopulations, or are they still connected as one single population? From our red jungle fowl work, again, what we could arrive at is there are different signatures in genetic structure which are being seen. Thanks to colleagues of ours who work with in WNI, we could showcase that the Northeast group and the North populations do show some dissimilarity in genetic profile. So is this what is being seen in the wild of gray jungle fowls? And then how does the stocks in captivity compare with that to the wild stock? And the other issue is like, despite all the tremendous work done on captive breeding with respect to gray jungle fowls, do they have heterogeneity levels matching with respect to the landscapes that they're brought into these species? That will be one of the most critical and important part to use the conservation genetic story for this species. Few examples that I would go again with respect to the earlier work is across all zoos for the red jungle fowl, and Brandon's the red jungle fowl data. We do see a lot of adverts in the zoos in all the zoos. So how is our structure for gray jungle fowl? This information is still much lacking. We hope that this initiative taken by captive breeding by these zoos and the park and the CZA power itself can take this further and work on gray jungle fowl as a species. There is much information still awaited for a wonderful pheasant species like the gray jungle fowl. I will end my talk with this words. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the very informative talk on the gray jungle fowl. And now we move on to the second part of this today's session. We will take question and answers for this session towards the end of the webinar. So now I'd like to introduce our speaker for the second part of the session, which is on Know Your Zoo. So we have with us Ms. Hima Shailaja, who is the curator of the Sri Venkateswara Zoological Park. A brief introduction about ma'am. She is a state service officer of the 2010 batch and has completed her graduation in the field of agriculture and postgraduate diploma in advanced wildlife management. She has worked under different capacities with the state government in the Department of Forest and in the Department of Environment and Forest, and has a decade of experience in the management of protected areas and forests. She will speak to us today on the Sri Venkateswara Zoological Park, the vision, its history, and the way forward. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, good evening, all. Next. Am I audible? Arundhati, next slide. Yeah. Let us see the history of Sri Venkateswara Zoological Park. As all of you know that it is located in Tirupati, and Tirupati is a temple town in the country renowned for Lord Sri Venkateswara. So the zoological park also named after the deity Lord Venkateswara. Considering the tourist potential of this temple town, Zoo Park has been established in Tirupati to spread the message of conservation of wildlife. It is existing in the natural forest. Zoo Park is existing in the natural forest at the foothills of Seshachalam hill ranges, which is an offshoot of Eastern Ghats and rich in biodiversity. And the foundation stone for the Zoo Park was laid in the year 1987 by Sri N.T. Ramarao, the then Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh. Later, the inauguration was done by Sri K.V.G. Bhaskar Reddy, the then Honorable Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, and opened to the public in 1993. The total area earmarked for the zoo is 1254.71 hectares, out of which 289 hectares has been developed so far. And the remaining area is proposed to develop for the construction of new enclosures and development of safaris, etc. Since it has vast area, there is a lot of scope and potential for the development of the zoo. Let us see the vision. Vision of the zoo is to develop the zoo park as an institution engaged in the conservation, research, rescue, and rehabilitation of endangered fauna of Eastern Ghats, and imparting conservation education through a mythological theme. Next. Next. Let us see the zoo theme. The zoo park is being developed on mythological theme, highlighting the role of animals in ancient scriptures. Ancient people gave a lot of importance to the animals in their lives, and even in Indian mythology teaches that God resides in all living beings. As such, respect for animals is taught, and many animals are treated with regard. Here, the logo of the zoo also designed with the head of Lord Ganesha, elephant-headed god. You can see the logo. It is mentioned on the logo a quote that Jiva Karunyameva Paramavadiha, which means expressing love and affection towards all living beings is the path to eternity. And the depiction of incarnations of Lord Vishnu as Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, and Narsimha avatars at the zoo entrance orients the visitor to the mythological zoo park of the mythological theme of the zoo park. And here, most of the animals exhibited are those which are mentioned in our ancient epics and manuscripts, such as Ramayana, Mahabharata, etc. And the enclosures in the zoo have been named after famous locations and personalities mentioned in Indian mythology. For example, Marichavana is name given to the spotted deer enclosure. Maricha was the demon who took golden spotted deer form in Ramayana. Like that, Airavat is the name given to the elephant enclosure. Airavat was the vehicle of Lord Indra, which was mentioned in Puranas. And all the signboards at the animal enclosures depicts the importance of that particular animal in mythology. Next. And it is the approved zoo master layout plan. It was approved in the year 2013 by CZDA. Next. Next. These are special features. It is one of the largest zoo park in Asia in terms of area. There is a lot of scope and potential for the development of the zoo. And the zoo is existing natural forest, and the animal enclosures are large so that animals feel comfortable in the enclosures as if they are in their natural habitats. As I mentioned earlier, zoo is located in Tirupati, an international pilgrim center. Lakhs of people across the world visit Tirupati Balaji temple every year. Many of them visit zoo park. And we have a rescue center for lions and tigers, which has been started in the year 2000 with the financial support of CZDA. Here we are doing conservation breeding program of grey Bengal fowl. Apart from the other animals, apart from that, other animals like Indian goat, white tiger, wild dogs, etc. are also breeding well here. And we have started herbivore safari and lion safari in the year 2009. Next. Next, yeah, these are the naturalistic enclosures. This is a white tiger enclosure. This is a lion enclosure. This is lion enclosure, which extended up to 1 acre. And our Sambar enclosure is extended in 4 acres of area. Such vast, means large naturalistic enclosures are there in Zoological Park. This is our white tiger enclosure. Next, coming to the organizational structure, curator is there in the curator is the director here, and around 200 people are working in the zoo park in different categories. Out of that, 105 are outsourced people, and every year around 3.5 crores we are spending on the wages. Next. Next. The zoo has been recategorized from medium zoo to large zoo in the year 2017 by CZDA. Next. Yeah, next. Animal collection. Let us see our animal collection. We have 88 species, including animals, birds, and reptiles, and total is 1095. And our animal collection includes endemic and endangered species of Eastern Ghats. As I already mentioned, our zoo is being developed in mythology. Preference has been given to the species of animals and birds, which are mentioned in Puranas, Vedas, etc. And here we are maintaining few exotic species also to impart conservation education, like mandrill, Himalayas baboon, etc., which have significance in other cultures. And we have a good collection of birds in parrot world, dysentery, and we have 2 aviaries with 49 species and of 544 birds. Next. Coming to the zoo vegetation and revenue, since last years, there is gradual increase in the number of visitors, and hence the zoo revenue also increased. The last 2 years, 2021, due to COVID pandemic, the zoo was closed for 8 months, which was a great loss in terms of revenue to us. Next. Next. Enrichment of enclosures. As a part of behavioral environmental enrichment, we have provided machans, wooden balls, ladders, water pools, etc. in the animal enclosures. They'll keep the animal active and make them to express their natural behavior. Next, you can observe enrichment of enclosures here. Next. Yeah, this is the feed requirement per day. Around 2,500 kgs of water is required to the herbivores, including elephants. And here we have one fodder plat in the extent of 22 hectares of area, and we are trying to self-sustain as per the fodder is concerned. Here we are forming fodder species like cocoa, sorghum, hedge lucerne, sugarcane, and all, etc. And we have mango, papaya, banana trees also in some extent of area. The fecal waste of herbivores will be collected every day, and we'll convert it into compost, and again we'll use it as a manure in the fodder plot. Next. Next. Yeah, these are the visitor amenities we are providing in the zoo to the visitors. Next slide. Next. Yeah, since the area of the zoo is vast, we are allowing 4-wheelers inside the zoo presently, and presently we have 15 battery operated vehicles for the visitors, and we are planning to increase the number of battery operated vehicles and to phase out the allowing of vehicles gradually. And we are providing cycles and battery cycles also for the visitors. And there is a facility here, QR code facility. We have arranged QR code plaques at the animal enclosures. If any visitor wanted to know more about the zoo, he can scan the QR code, and he can know more about the animal or zoo or bird. Next. Next. Yeah. And we are providing purified water to the visitors, and we have adequate number of shade shelters, washrooms, and all. Visitors can enjoy the nature at the foothills of Seshachalam Hills. And we have a zoo school where we will screen wildlife related documentaries, films, etc. And we have a zoo souvenir shop, help desk, children play area, parking area, etc. Next. Yeah, Nitin. This is our herbivore safari. In around 34 acres, we have lion and herbivore safari. Next. Next. Yeah. These are our young ones born in our zoo. Indian Gore, wild dogs. This is the wild dog. Recently, wild dog gave birth to 9 pups. They are all healthy. Their wild dogs are breeding very well here. White tiger. Next. Next slide. Yeah. Sambar deer, chinkara, four-horned antelope. We have a good number of four-horned antelopes also. They are breeding well here. Next. 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 Coming to the summer arrangements, as I mentioned, the zoo is located at the foothills of Seshachalam. Effect of heat radiation from the hills will be more in summers, and here summers are very severe, and even the temperatures goes up to 45 degrees in the peak summers. So in summers, we'll make all summer arrangements, and we'll take all the precautions. And these are the summer arrangements we have made in the enclosures. Shade shelters made with naturalistic materials like dried coconut leaves, and vetiver mats fixed around the enclosures. Watering will be done on the mats frequently to keep the enclosure cool. And we have provided coolers for all the carnivores, and shade nets on the top of the enclosure to reduce the heat. Next. And sprinklers are fixed in the enclosures. and applied cool paint on the top of the night hose to keep the night hose cool, etc. Next. Yeah. Coming to the veterinary care, we have well-equipped hospital, and these are we have latest tranquilizing equipment also. We have good isolation ward, quarantine center, and post-mortem room also. Next. These are the latest equipment. We have updated the hospital with latest equipment recently. Next. Yeah. Veterinary care. Yeah. We have 2 veterinary assistant surgeons, and they used to participate. They used to conduct rescue operations also. Prophylactic measures. These are the prophylactic measures scheduled. Next. These are general prophylactic measures we are taking in the zoo regularly. Animal enclosures will be disinfected with the Botox, Virkon, Forceline, and regular cleaning of saucer pits will be done, and food baths arranged at the entrance of animal night hose. Next. And regard to COVID precautionary measures, since last COVID, we are following specific COVID protocols to contain the spread of virus in the zoo park. We have installed an artificial disinfection tunnel at the entrance of the zoo. The body temperature, animal keepers will go through the tunnel while entering into the zoo park. The body temperatures of the animal keepers will be scanned here automatically, and they will be disinfected by the foggers inside the tunnel. And coming to the feed, we are dipping the chicken, beef in hot water for 10 minutes before we supply to animals. Even vegetables, fruits also washed with salt water. And we ensured that the animal keepers, all the animal keepers wear PPE kits when they are giving food to the animals, especially carnivores. And recently we have organized COVID vaccination program also at our zoo, with the support of district administration. And most of our animal keepers got vaccinated against COVID. Next. These are the few prophylactic measures we are taking care of in view of COVID. Next slide. Yeah. Conservation breeding program of grey jungle fowl. We are doing conservation breeding program of grey jungle fowl. Mr. Mervin Fernandez explained in detail about the species, so I'm not going in detail about the species. Next. Initially, the breeding of grey jungle fowl started in the zoo in the year 2000 with 3 rescue birds of wild origin. And the forest surrounding the zoo park is the natural habitat of grey jungle fowl. Hence, CZA has identified SV Zoo Park as coordinating zoo of conservation breeding program of grey jungle fowl in the year 2007. The main objective of the program is to have at least 100 properly scientifically bred and physically, genetically, and behaviorally healthy individuals. Here we have constructed constructed 2 blocks for the off-display conservation breeding program. And then we have totally 32 pens here, and all the pens are rodent proof, and the pens have a brick wall on on the rear side, and the other 3 sides have covered with chain link fence. And after construction of this program, the conservation breeding program has been started in the year 2014, and we have taken up the genetic profiling of the birds to test their heterozygosity level and genetic purity. It was done by Laquans, Hyderabad. And the birds marked with leg bands with unique code, they are also provided by CZA. Next. This is the feed per day per board we are providing to the grey jungle fowl in the zoo. Next. Sir. And we have provided the hideouts, swings, palmyra stumps, etc., to make it more natural and congenial to the grey jungle fowl inside the pen. And here incubation done by the hen itself in the palmyra stems. Otherwise, the eggs will be collected and incubated with the domestic brooding hen. And sometimes we are using the incubator also for brooding. Here, species performed well and bred over the year and breed very well over the years. Presently, we have 66 birds, 32 male, female 31, and chicks 2. Next. And one of the focus objective of the zoo park is conservation education. We are conducting regular awareness programs to the visitors on the significant wildlife days. These are few awareness programs and workshops conducted in the recent times. And due to COVID, we are not conducted many of these kind of activities. Instead, we are conducting online competitions to the students. Next. Yeah, animal adoption. We are promoting the animal adoption programs extensively and motivating people and organizations towards the animal adoption. In recent times, State Bank of India Tirupati has donated 15 lakhs to the zoo and adopted 12 animals for 1 year. And we are giving free entry tickets and income tax exemption certificate under ATG to the donors who have contributed the amount more than 10,000 rupees. And we are inviting donors also to take up developmental activities inside the zoo. Recently, around 7 kilometers of 9 feet wall on the northern side of the zoo park was constructed by Infosys Foundation. They have constructed the wall and handed it over to the zoo park. This is a greatest contribution to the to our zoo. Next. The way forward is nocturnal house, Himalayan black bear, Asiatic lion enclosures. Already construction is almost completed. We are nearing completion, and we are trying to improve the animal collection in the zoo and construction of new enclosures as per the approved management plan. And we are planning to improve the visitors amenities, and in future we are planning to collaborate research programs, particularly pertaining to conservation breeding of animals of the zoo. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you, ma'am, for the informative session on the zoo. We now take question answers for the session. So we first start with the Know Your Species section. Dr. Fernandez, are you there? Right. So, sir, the first question for you is that what is it? Sorry. Are there any known hybridization between grey and red jungle fowl?
There is a reported one from Palakkad area where Ali and Ripley has mentioned it in their book. The specimen is the, I don't know whether the specimen there, but this is the hybrid which is known.
Okay. All right, sir. So the next question for you is, sir, that how can zoos contribute towards ensuring heterozygosity of gene pool in this species?
So one thing is to match it with the wild. Once they take up a conservation breeding program, is when you get your founder pairs, is to also find out what is the level of genetic heterogeneity levels within the pairs that you're breeding. So that will match up with respect to the landscape itself. Now different landscapes. What I also had was whether we have enough of genetic data from across great ranges to know what diversity is there. Since that data, to my knowledge, it's not available right now in the Indian science context. So it's very difficult to known science on the stock, then it will be okay. What is the level of genetic levels, say in Mount Abu or in the Western Ghats, Northern Western Ghats, Southern Western Ghats? Primarily that information is still available. And I hope institutes, research institutes or universities can take up such type of work in these void gaps which are there.
Sorry. The third question for you is that there are known issues of hybridization with domestic species in the wild. Is it clear now?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So the question for you is that
Yeah.
of hybridization with domestic species in the wild, what
Right.
conservation measures are needed to prevent the same?
See, these issues keep, like the red also, we have these same issues that it is there. Sometimes it occurs. But the wild ancestry will still maintain its flock. It's not that it's going to percolate into the entire system. Even through the studies from red, which is more pronounced in terms of the effort put in and the sampling and what we could see, we still have a lot of populations which were not having domestic genomes within them. So we also feel that the same pattern might be there through also for grey jungle fowl. And with grey, it will be all the more difficult in terms of domestics because selection parameters with females are birth wide don't look they don't look like the reds, the domestic breeds. Uh, it's totally different in terms of the female side, the female selection, unless it's forced introgression, which is happening. Otherwise, we'll not see it so much of prevalence of hybridization in gray than compared to red.
Okay. All right. And so the last question for you is that there is a proposal to remove the grey jungle fowl from the CITES Appendix 2 list. As per BirdLife International, the population decline is less than 30%. So what is your opinion on that, sir?
Yes, this proposition is a 2012 proposition just put forth. New Zealand was a contracting party to it, but it didn't get the required support. Uh, so the thing is, like with Appendix 2, trade is permissible in terms of with a proper certification with any country that has it. Only that you have to declare your stock and you have to declare what type of generation. It cannot come out from India because India per se, the species is put into a higher level of protection by being listed in the Wildlife Protection. So the domestic legislation holds much higher than compared to international conventions. Having said that, the stocks which are there outside India, they can still be traded under Appendix 2. Only that it will be known, first of all, they have to say that it is pre-convention, post-convention. Most probably it will be post-convention. And with post-convention, if it's F1, you declare it as an F1 and you can still trade with it. There is no restrictions on that trade. It is a regulated trade where trade is permissible in an Appendix 2 species. So I think so. I don't feel so that to delist it or to move it out from Appendix 2 will solve any sort of purpose, especially with respect to the countries. What is that? That's my personal opinion. But as you know, NGOs don't have an opinion into that. It's the parties which will vote on whenever those agenda items come into voting. And let's see how all the countries, 141 countries vote on that. When it comes, 121, sorry.
Okay. All right. So those were the questions for you. We now move on to the questions for Madam Shelja. So, ma'am, the first question for you is, what are the future plans of expansion for the zoo?
Already I have mentioned here, a nocturnal house is under construction, and we have almost completed the construction of Asiatic lion and enclosure and Himalayan black bear. There is a lot of scope for the development of construction of new enclosures and safaris here, and we are planning to start white safari also in our zoo. There is a lot of scope. Definitely we'll develop the zoo.
All right. So, ma'am, the second question for you is that there are a lot of visitors to Tirupati temple as such because it's a famed pilgrimage site. So, what are there any special initiatives that you've done to sensitize the visitors towards conservation education in the zoo, and like what is the feedback been like?
Yeah, we are conducting conservation awareness programs, and we have fixed so many signboards depicting the importance of zoological park related, means with linking with mythology. We have fixed many signboards in the Tirumala Ghat roads and all, so that people will sensitize, people will come here, and we are conducting many conservation awareness programs in all the significant days, so that we are imparting conservation education.
Okay.
On the basis of, means through mythological theme, we can say.
All right. So, ma'am, I think the third question for you, I think you've already answered this, said that is genetic data available for the grey jungle fowl maintained in the zoo? I think that
Yeah, genetic purity was tested by Lacons Hyderabad in 2014. After that, we have not done the genetic purity test. We have to do it. Yes, yeah, we have to do. We are planning to do that.
All right. Okay, ma'am. So with that, I think those are the questions for you. And with that, we conclude the session for today. And I would like to thank the speakers for taking time out from their schedules and joining us for our 13th Know Your Species, Know Your Zoo talk. And I'd like to thank the audience for being so wonderful and tuning in to us. And I request them to tune in for our next week's talk, which is on the Dhol and on the Indira Gandhi Zoological Park. And I would like to also inform the audience that the Tirupati Zoo will be continuing their conservation awareness activities throughout this week up to the 13th of June, and do follow their YouTube channel and Facebook page to know more. Thank you once again, Dr. Fernandez, Madam, and to everyone who's joined in for this talk.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.